my goal is to not have to, in the next 2 years, not have to rely on Airbnb and Vrbo. I hope it's like maybe 10% of our bookings and the rest is direct. So from the very beginning, I knew that we were going to need to help our audience understand that we had a brand. It's Cabins on the Cumberland. Like, we had that established. We knew who our target audience was, and that we were defining what the guest experience was going to be.
All right, welcome back, you guys, to another episode of Off Grid. Today, I am so excited to welcome Steph Weber to the podcast. You guys, I have been friends with Steph for almost a decade now, and it has been so cool to see her journey. She is the founder of the Weber Co., which is supporting short-term rentals in boutique hotels in branding and marketing. Also the host of the Branded and Booked podcast, and she's also building her real estate portfolio with her husband and being a mom to 2 toddler boys. Welcome to the show, Steph. I'm so excited to have you here.
Zoey, I'm so stoked to be here. And also, I'm obsessed with the name of this podcast. Why did I not ask you that beforehand? When you said that, I was like, that is literally the best name for this podcast.
Yes, I thought Off Grid, like, my goal of the show was to really go like off the radar with all different topics, like not just talk real estate, because even for yourself, you're a mom, you have toddler boys you're handling, you're doing real estate, you're a wife, you have a business. So I really wanted to go on like all topics. So Off Grid really felt fitting, not only for what we, are building our business around, but to just share all the things that everyone wants to hear about. So speaking of that, let's bring it back to where this all started for you, just entrepreneurship in general.
Yeah, great question, Zoey. Man, I like to say that my entrepreneurial journey began when I was like 17 and I started working for other small businesses. When I was 17, my parents unfortunately filed bankruptcy, and that led them to, they filed bankruptcy on a business that my dad owned. That led them to filing personal bankruptcy. I was a senior in high school, and they were kind of like, listen, if you want to go to college, like, you can, but you're totally doing it on your own. So I knew that I was going to need a job. I knew that I had to pay for gas in my car. I was like, I've got to figure this out. So I applied for all of the jobs that kids usually do, like at different primarily locations at the mall. Cause I was like, I don't really think I want to do fast food. But then there was this prom boutique that was not in the mall, but it was right outside the mall. And I was like, it'd be so cool to work with like prom dresses. How fun. So I applied, they hired me as their sales associate. And that is like truly where I feel like so much of my entrepreneurial spirit and journey began. My dad was an entrepreneur too, obviously, but in that business and in working with them, I really understood. I learned to understand what it meant to grow and develop a small business and work with small team. And everyone wears a lot of different hats. And like, that is so true for entrepreneurship as a whole. So in that, I worked in the fashion industry for about a decade. In 2016, I started my own brand under the name Trendy and Indie. With Ray Lynn's, that was the prom dress boutique. We started working with influencers. And at the time it was like bloggers, like, we're working with bloggers. And I was like, wait a minute, I can totally do this. I can tell people what I'm wearing, and I can share that on Instagram, and I can blog about that, and makeup and like where we're traveling. Yeah, why not? So Trinity and Indy was born in 2018, and that was great. I had a great run. I loved working with the various different brands that I did. I had a lot of different cool hotel collaborations. I even did some with 25 Hours hotels over in Europe, Andaz, Napa Valley, Lark Hotels out in Nantucket. One of the last hotel collaborations I had was in New York City during New York Fashion Week in 2018. It was with Andaz Wall Street. And I'm sitting in a fashion show at New York Fashion Week going, this is so cool. And it's so many people's dream, like as an influencer, to be here and be invited to these shows. And I'm not fulfilled. And there's something more for me. And the brands that I was working with, Zoey, honestly, it was like, hey, Steph, we want you to come in and, talk about what you're wearing. And I would be like, okay, cool. But like, what makes you different than the boutique down the street or, whatever. And they didn't have a good answer for me a lot of the time. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is a branding problem. It's a branding and marketing problem. So I took my business and I transitioned to the Weber Co. to be able to support entrepreneurs in a different capacity through branding and marketing. And so the Weber Co. has been a coaching company. It's been an agency, and we have served hundreds of different small businesses and entrepreneurs that we've helped scale to 6 and 7 figures, which has been absolutely amazing. And then in 2023, I had our second baby boy and again, felt unsettled. I tell Colin, I have this like weird 2-year itch where I'm like, I have to change everything I'm doing right now today. So in 2023, I was 8 months pregnant with Noah, And we were like, let's buy our first investment property. This is a good idea. We'd always wanted to get into short-term rentals. Like I did have a very vivid memory of Colin and I being in our first apartment right after we graduated college in 2015 and being like, we should open a B&B and you can make breakfast and I'll host and it'll be great. And, at the time that was such an outlandish idea. And now I'm like, wait, we're doing that. Like that's actually happening to an extent anyway. So anyway, we bought our first property in 2023. We also started our co-hosting business at that time, which we scaled to 6 figures in 12 months with a newborn and a toddler. And I almost lost my mind. In that time, we also had an opportunity to build a micro resort. And that was such a manifestation moment. I wrote down when we started our co-hosting journey and got into short-term rentals, I was like, our big vision is to have a piece of land and it's got to be either near water or in the mountains. It's got to be somewhere in nature because that's just how our family is. And then literally 7 weeks after I posted that on Instagram, I had an opportunity come into my text that was like, here's this piece of land near Lake Cumberland that's riverfront property in Kentucky. And it's so many things unfolded from there. We can talk about that whole story, but I feel like I've given you the longest intro ever. So anyway, there's a lot to digest with that, but short-term rentals are our whole life. And now the Weber Co exists to serve short-term rental owners and boutique hotels. We still co-host. We're, have this micro resort. So my whole world is real estate and short-term rentals. It's really wild.
I love it. So much to unpack here. So thank you for the best intro ever. And I still remember when we met, I wasn't doing real estate and you weren't doing real estate. And somehow everyone thinks that I know you because of the social media short-term rental space. I'm like, no, I knew Steph before when I wasn't doing real estate. She wasn't doing real estate. And it's been so cool to see how both of our journeys have, unpathed and evolved to what we didn't even realize back in the day. And to hear that you were partnering with hotels, not even probably a decade ago. And now you're literally bringing your own micro resort to life just shows how fast things can escalate. What was it like, just as an identity crisis as a business owner, pivoting from a coaching marketing agency? Because I still remember when you were pregnant with your first, quitting your 9-to-5, going all in on coaching. You would get up at 5:30 in the morning. I still remember seeing all that. And pivoting from a 9-to-5, stable income, and then going to a full business owner while becoming a mom for the first time. Let's talk about that before we even get into the real estate portion.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Zoey. I sometimes forget how much history we have. I'm like, wow, we do. We know so much about each other. We've been there for so many things. But yeah, you're right. You watched that whole thing happen. Yeah. So in 2020, the world came crashing down, right? This was literally on my birthday. March 16th is my birthday. So I remember Disney shutting down and I was like, what is happening right now? But I also remember at that time, I was I had a goal this year in 2020 to match my salary with my business revenue, which was $60,000. It was not crazy, but I was like, if I can do that, that's going to feel like financial freedom to me. And later that March, so it was probably the last week of March, I saw a Facebook ad for a coach who was teaching about live lunching. And I was like, okay, tell me more. I've always believed in coaching. I know that coaching can help you get where you want to go faster than you do on your own. So I watched her workshop and learned about live lunching. And I told her salesperson at the time, I was like, my goal is to be able to leave my job this year. And she was like, oh, Steph, that can happen for you in the next 90 days. I was like, well, that sounds insane, but maybe December. Okay. So I came in, she was like, if you come in and get to work, which I do, she was like, you'll see the results. So I came in, I got to work literally 60 days after joining that program. I had an 85K lunch and I was like, done, I'm out, I'm leaving my job. And in that time, so I made the decision to leave my job over Memorial Day weekend. We were camping at the end of the world in Sedona. And I will never forget being like, I'm done. Why am I doing this? I'm not going to push any harder to just I was waking up at 5:30 in the morning to coach, go to my job, come home, coach some more. It was insane. And I was like, I can't keep this up. Well, in that time, literally between Memorial Day weekend and then 2 weeks later, we found out we were pregnant with our first baby. So I was like, cool. So I had this great launch. Things were really taking off with the business. We found out we were pregnant. I told my bosses I was leaving. That got really messy and dramatic and we won't go into that, but whatever. And then, I was like, there's definitely some oh my gosh, are we going to be able to make this with a new baby, I like the business is really growing. I'm really on my own right now. Now I'm going to need a team to be able to support clients while I try to have this baby. And it was a lot. It felt very overwhelming. But I think as entrepreneurs, we are wildly resourceful. And that is what allows us to do what we do as business owners. So I had to get resourceful. I had to bootstrap some things. I had to cry some and just like literally throw my hands up and be like, I don't know, but it's going to all work out. And you have to trust. Like I've learned so much throughout my entrepreneurial journey that I just have to trust that things are going to work out. And I always know that. Like, I know I'm always being led to where I need to go. I know that I just have to trust that things are going to work. And usually they do in one way or another, even if it's not in the way that I thought it would work out. And, you know, I didn't necessarily have the like maternity leave that I wanted in that time. I didn't with our second either, but maybe that's just part of who I am. And like these babies, these boys have like been a part of these growing businesses. And there's something really interesting about growing and caring for tiny humans while also growing and caring for multiple businesses. That's all equally challenging and complicated and also beautiful and rewarding.
Yeah. No, I can't agree more. And I think also there's like this weird thing that happens when you're pregnant that I at least felt once I passed the first trimester, like nausea, that I was like in overdrive. Like I was a straight up machine. I made more money pregnant than I did ever prior to not being pregnant. And that really like set me up for, you know, I didn't have maternity leave necessarily, but either did you, but we in a way got to kind of choose how those days looked. You know, you weren't held to a 9 to 5 or a boss, but yeah, I remember I was like, people say like pregnant women just lay there for 9 months and grow this baby. But I literally was like wild. I had so much energy and was just like so excited about everything that was happening. So your first baby, you're literally pivoting out of a 9 to 5 into your own business. And then the next baby, you are in labor, basically closing on your first property. So, and your kids are not that far apart, Steph. So let's go from like, where did you had a big team. I remember at your agency, you had like 5 team members maybe. And then I remember you kind of scaled back. So you obviously know the importance of hiring, but also, you know, scaling too big can be really difficult for some, and actually, you know, hurt you more than help you. I think that's something us as entrepreneurs know and learn the hard way. But where did we pivot from being a marketing agency, coaching, you know, owning your own business, the Weber Co, what it used to be, and then being like real estate is where we're going to go with this next baby and dive in that route?
Yeah. So it started with failure, actually, Zoe. And I always say like failing as a business owner is absolutely inevitable. And if you're not comfortable with failing and owning up to like, okay, what happened here? I always think that failure is an opportunity to get us closer to where we're meant to be next. And that's how I have to look at it. So in September of 2022, I found out that I was pregnant again with Noah. And that month I had a failed launch and I was like, dang, like what is going on? I don't know. I had a team of 5. So it was like myself plus 4 others that were on my payroll, that were employees that like whose livelihoods I was responsible for. And in that failed launch, I was like, I'm going to have to scale back the team. And I knew that September, I was like, something in this market is changing. Like the world of online coaching and coaching programs is changing and it's evolving. And so I have to figure out how to shift and adjust and adapt. And I knew that in like part of that, Zoe, was the fact that I hadn't picked a niche within the Weber Co. I was like, we serve so many different types of businesses, like brick and mortar, e-com, health and wellness coaches, retail, real estate. Actually, I did have some real estate agents as well as clients too, but I just knew that we were like going to have to either pick a niche or pick some different area of focus. And I knew that in that I was also going to have to scale back the team. And those conversations sucked. But I tried to do everything I could to like do right by our team and make sure that, you know, I was like, listen, I unfortunately cannot keep you anymore. Here's why, here's what's going on, but here's a month's worth of pay. Like, I'm sorry. I know it's, you know, it sucks. It sucks for all of us. And there were definitely times that I didn't pay myself. So it was like, you know, we were borrowing from our savings or doing whatever we had to do for us. And I saw a video the other day. I forget who it was from. It's somebody big in like the world of like online entrepreneurship. And they were like, there is like, you're truly an entrepreneur when there are months and you don't pay yourself and you pay your team instead, or you pay your vendors instead. And I'm like, yup, 100% have been there. Not that that's sustainable. You can't do that forever, but there are times where like that may be required. And then you have to figure out as a business owner what your next steps are going to be. So in that, I was just kind of like, what is it that we're supposed to do? What makes sense next? And I actually think I reached out to you at the beginning of 2023 and I was like, I think that we want to do real estate. So what does that look like? So we had that conversation. I again invested in a mentor, and that's when we kind of like dove in. But again, it's like it came out of failure. I did unfortunately release my entire team, and I kind of like started fresh. I still had a coaching program that I was running at the time. I think my last launch was like February of 2023, and that launch went well, but I had changed the program and I had changed the intention. So I like had kind of picked something specific to focus on, and it was good. It carried me through until I could fully transition into what I'm doing today. And that's part of business. Again, like I always say your brand has to grow and evolve with you. And because the Weber Co. has been this very interesting, like personal and business brand, I'm like, so many people have seen that, like, they're probably like, what are you doing, Steph? I'm like, I don't know, but just like, let me roll. This is who I am. And this is what we're going to do now. So anyway.
No, I love it. I mean, it is true. Like when you're building a brand or a personal brand, it's going to evolve with you. Like Steph, 10 years ago when I met you, you didn't have kids. It was just you and Colin. You had moved across the country. Like you were end of the world. If anyone is listening and lives in Arizona or like is anywhere around there, that is the best camping spot, like known to man. So definitely check that out. But you guys, national parks. And then now you have two boys that also are looking to you guys for what their life is going to look like and what their norm is going to be. So you have to have a brand that's going to evolve with you. Even for myself, like I'm like slowly seeing how mom content keeps peeking in, but that is like what I do, 24/7, literally. So I love that it's been evolving. It's been so cool to like see it go through all of its phases. And now you guys are getting into real estate. I still remember the call. I was like 7 weeks pregnant, so nauseous. And I remember voice memoing you like, yes, you can do it. And I remember you guys were like wanting to find an income stream that you could put into real estate. And that kind of started your co-hosting business and I tell a lot of my mentees, like, if you need to build an additional income source to be able to buy real estate, try to make it real estate related, whether it's co-hosting, you're freelancing for people that own real estate or have properties. Find a way to get into the real estate world, even if it's you not buying that first property for the very first time. So what did that look like? Did your co-hosting business launch before you guys closed on that short-term rental in Indy that you personally owned, or was it after? I can't remember the organization.
Yeah, Zoey, you definitely are the one who introduced us to co-hosting. I very vividly remember this. And you were like, yeah, have you heard about co-hosting? And I was like, no, but tell me more. And you were like, you should look into this. So yeah, co-hosting is such an interesting journey also. So we have real estate agents here that we're connected to in Indianapolis. And we told them, we want to buy our short-term rental. They have 4 properties here in Indy that they own and do their short-term rentals. So they took us out to dinner. Mind you, again, like I am 8 months pregnant. I am massive at this point, and I am so done with pregnancy. They take us out to dinner, and we were telling them, what we want to do. And they're like, we're so interested in what you want to do with the management side of things, because we know so many people who want to have short-term rentals, but they don't want to manage. And there's not a lot of great management companies that we would recommend. And I was like, wow, that's so interesting. So that real estate agent heard that conversation and then connected us to our first client while I am in labor at the hospital. Literally that day, I get a text that's like, this property owner and then our real estate agent and me. And the real estate agent is like, Steph is literally in labor in the hospital right now having a baby, but I wanted to connect you guys because I think she'd be really great for your property. That property was an existing STR here in Indy, but it was being managed by a company who essentially was shutting the doors on the management side of what they were doing. And they're now more of a like data company in the sphere. So we had Noah, came home from the hospital 5 days later, onboarded that client. So we closed her without having our property. I don't even, honestly, like there's so much of that time that I like don't even remember, because I had a conversation with her probably like 3 days after we got home from the hospital with Noah. And then I vividly remember like having all my pump parts with me, having Noah in his little, car seat thing, and Colin and I driving. And I had like a burp cloth on my shoulder that I'd forgotten to take off, driving to her property to do, content there and to like see what the setup was and understand what we were getting into, which we had no idea, and we're way in over our heads. But that's how I learn. Like I learned just by throwing myself at it and figuring it out along the way. So that was that. But she was our first, and then we quickly grew from there, and largely due to that real estate agent connection, which was great. And then also due to what we were sharing in our journey on social media too. So yeah, it's been good. The co-host network now too on Airbnb has helped bring us some clients too.
I was actually wondering that because that launched maybe like 6 to 8 months ago. So I've always been wondering over the last 5 years I've been in the space, like, is Airbnb going to help build co-hosting businesses? Because it would make more sense and used to get flagged if you messaged an owner asking if they needed support in that realm. So it's cool. I'm sure you've had all good and bad clients come through that route. So with your co-hosting business, did you guys start operating in Indy, which is where you're located specifically? Are you willing to take people out of state in different markets? Do you specify? I have a student, Nick, who you also know, Nick, who only has co-hosting clients in his market, which is really strategic because his maintenance people and his plumber and all those people are also his team members or can be. And it's been, I would say, like a lighter play than expanding 28 properties around the country because they're all in one market. So what did that look like for you guys? And obviously you learned, I'm sure, a lot along the way with systems and how to actually managing the houses is one of the hardest parts of real estate. It's like, that's why co-hosts exist.
Yeah. Honestly, managing the guest experience sometimes is like the easiest part. And I'm like, this is like the easiest thing. But managing owner relationships and expectations, managing the house, vendors, etc. Yeah, it's a lot. So yeah, we did start in Indy and we grew quite a bit here in Indy, and it's still our predominant market and we still have a desire to continue to grow here, but we are incredibly selective about properties that we take on. So we will now not take on properties that are smaller than 3 bedrooms. They have to be designed a specific way. They have to provide a specific guest experience. So I'm just like, we got to a point where we were being reached out to host like a 2-bedroom property. And I'm like, it literally doesn't make financial sense for us, or really probably for you. But instead, why don't I help get you set up for self-management? So that's a service that we offer now too. But yeah, we started growing here. We have expanded outside Indy. So we have, obviously our cabins are in Jamestown, Kentucky. We have a cabin in Red River Gorge. We have a property in French Lick, Indiana, which is about 2.5 hours away from us. So we've certainly expanded. I think for me, I probably wouldn't want to take on properties. I would consider potentially like Florida, but only because we have a team member down there and she could kind of be our boots on the ground. Which would be good. But I would say for us, like mostly focusing in Midwest, now that we've built team members in multiple and like built those teams in multiple markets, I feel confident in what we need to do in order to have those systems in place and be able to manage effectively. What we run into, especially in small towns, is, like our guy down at the cabins, who's our HVAC guy for our mini splits. He's like, I don't work Sundays. So if you have a problem on Sundays, like you're not going to get me. And he's the only guy down there for like 100 miles that could come out and deal with these freaking mini splits. So I'm like, okay, well, like it just kind of is what it is. And we just have to be able to communicate that with guests and navigate that in the best way that we can with our team and with guests. But yeah, it's interesting. And I think if I were to tell anybody who wants to get into co-hosting where to start as close to you as you can so that you can have like your own feet on the ground and be hands-on and getting things set up and going so that you understand the expectations that you're trying to put in place. And then as you bring in team and as you expand other markets, you know what those are. You've been building the systems, and it's going to be a lot easier for you to replicate that.
Mm-hmm. And like you guys heard, I mean, Steph in 12 months built a 6-figure business, not like on accident, but kind of by like her own need of needing to manage her own property. And then it was like, well, I'm doing it for mine. I can do it for someone else, which is true. If it is in your wheelhouse, which if you know Steph, it's in her wheelhouse, like guest experience and hospitality is right up her alley. I don't think everyone should be a co-host, but it just shows like you guys literally built a whole nother income stream that you could funnel into real estate and not have to take that out of your own business or your 9-to-5s or whatever it looks like. So I am just like so excited to see what that continues to evolve. And like you said, the more you do it, the more clients you have, the pickier you can get. I'm sure you probably have like specific revenue you're really wanting to hit because it doesn't make sense on your guys' end or like you said, for the owner. And I want to talk about, so you guys closed on your short-term rental in Indy that was, owned from you guys primarily, no partners or anything. But then you had and I still remember when this deal, you sent it to me and you're like, do you know anyone that would want to invest in it? Like, are you interested? And I always laugh because so many of my friends send me deals that they want me to invest in or they're, raising fund capital for. And I'll be like knee deep into a project. Like, I'm like, dude, I have a half framed house. Like I cannot put money into your project until this project's done. And I think we were like in that with the cabin. We were like still in demo or something, but I still remember that deal coming through. I remember you sending me like, what do you think on the revenue? This is the underwriting, like, how's it looking? And that deal really made sense for you to be a part of because you're also co-hosting that micro resort. So I want to talk about how that kind of became about. People on this show are going to love to hear about like partnerships, how they're formed and what like the nitty gritty is. So anything you're willing to share on that, I think it just shows how every partnership is literally created differently.
Yeah, the way that this project came to be was very serendipitous. So
Yeah.
we basically, I had my esthetician here in Indy that I've been seeing since 2016 sent me a text on like July 18th of 2023 at like 10 o'clock at night. She was like, hey, one of my other clients has this property. Actually, I think her text literally said, in case you want to jump in with both feet, she's now watched my entrepreneurial journey and she knows how I do things, like a crazy person, but it's fine. So she sends me this text. I immediately reach out to Valerie on Facebook and I'm like, hi, you don't know me, but like, tell me more about your cabins. I want to know what you guys are doing. Essentially, it was a 9-acre piece of land. They owned the land. And then they also were going to be building cabins is kind of like, and they positioned it as like, if you're looking for your next vacation home or you want a second home or, you know, whatever, it's riverfront property. It's one of the best spots in the nation for trout fishing. It's like beautiful. It's very serene. It's 20 minutes away from Lake Cumberland, which is a massive lake that spans across 2 states. So really just like a really cool little small town Kentucky community. Okay. So anyway, that happened. And then I will never forget telling Colin about this. And I'm like, we're doing this. I don't know. I literally can't tell you how I know that this project is going to come to life, but it is going to. We are going to be involved and we're doing it. Colin was like, you're a psycho. We literally just spent our entire life savings on a different property. We have a newborn and a toddler. You're pivoting your business. We have a new business. What are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know, going all in with both feet. So he's like, all right. So I started talking about this, Zoey, on social media and on Facebook. Now, keep in mind, like we were brand new to real estate. So when I started asking about partnerships and I was like, I just want somebody to fund this project and let me do my thing and then like split the profits 50-50 with me. And people were like, what? I was like, listen, I think that's valuable because I'm bringing all of my knowledge and everything that I do from a branding and marketing perspective. I'll do the setup. Like I'll give a level of sweat equity in this project. Well, anyway, started talking about it, had probably 50 different conversations with people who were kind of interested in hearing more about the vision and what we were trying to do. I knew for us, it wasn't just like 9 acres with a bunch of cabins. It was 9 acres of very intentional use with cabins, with kind of like a shelter common area that's like also could be an event space, definitely more micro weddings, DIY kind of weddings, but a space where people could host that event and everyone has a place to stay, retreats, family reunions, huge spot for that. So my vision was more than just like, let's build some cabins. It was much more intentional. So within that, I chatted with my CPA and she and her husband are long-term real estate investors here in Indy and they have like 7 properties here. So they were interested. I chatted with a couple in a mastermind that I was in at the time and they were like, listen, we have a lot of capital and we've been looking for a project to deploy that capital into, but we don't have the time to manage it. And then we went down to look at the property at the beginning of August 2023 with our CPA. We all fell in love with the property. We met the builders there and they took us out to dinner that night and they were like, we want to be a partner in this deal too. Like, yes, we own the land and yes, we'll build it. And as long as we can figure out what that looks like and we can still be involved, like we want to be a part of this, but we only want to be a 25% partner and we don't want to manage. So we basically had 4 partners at that point who could all be 25% equity partners, except for Colin and I were like, where's this capital going to come from? So we actually took a HELOC on our primary residence, which is probably one of like the biggest risks we've ever taken. And hopefully it will all pay off. I can't tell you that it's paid off yet, but it will eventually. So that happened. We ended up purchasing the land and the cabins and the event center for $2.3 million was our final price. So all of we found a local bank to finance the deal. They definitely financed the project based on the vision that we were bringing to life, but they also only used the numbers from the vacation rental revenue because retreats and weddings were like very hypothetical. And they were like, you don't have hard and fast numbers on this, so we can't finance the project based on that. But it made sense for them based on just the cabins alone, which was great. So they financed the deal. We closed on that in December of 2023. But during that time, our builder had actually started development, which was amazing. And we're super thankful that he did because it allowed us to get up and running a little bit quicker than we would have otherwise. So we closed. And then in June of 24, we had our first 2 cabins go live, followed by a third, followed by our triplex. And now we're getting ready to launch 5 cabins, 5 additional cabins. So it's been a journey. That project has been a journey.
Not only was it your second deal, but it was like multiple dwellings, huge piece of property, and development, custom development, which is ground up. And that can, I remember your Wi-Fi story about how insane that cost was unexpectedly, which in a build that can really Reed and I say every $5,000 in a build can go elsewhere. Like anything over budget, it has an allocation elsewhere. It really does come down to the final dollar, like every dollar amount matters. So I remember there's probably been a lot of things along the way. You guys are killing it in the marketing space of just getting the cabins out there, like building the social media, building the marketing for it. What are you bringing from your past experience into the micro resort, the hospitality, the short-term rental space that you are setting yourselves apart from any other, place they could stay in Kentucky or nearby in that market?
I think one of the biggest misses, honestly, Zoe, for short-term rental owners and also in the boutique hotel space is that it's like, listen, we'll just rely on the OTAs to bring us business and we'll let that be that. Well, in that, you're basically selling the asset, not selling. Okay, I'll use that term loosely, but you have this asset that you have paid for with your hard-earned money that you've worked for. And you're just like, here, Airbnb, you can have it, essentially, is kind of what you're doing, in my opinion, and from what I see. So with my background in branding and marketing, I knew my goal is to not have to, in the next 2 years, not have to rely on Airbnb and Vrbo. I hope it's maybe 10% of our bookings and the rest is direct. So from the very beginning, I knew that we were going to need to help our audience understand that we had a brand. It's Cabins on the Cumberland. We had that established. We knew who our target audience was and that we were defining what the guest experience was going to be. I think more than anything, one of the reasons that I know, Zoe, you teach on unique stays. One of the reasons unique stays work really well is because guests are looking for an experience that's out of the ordinary. They're looking for something that's not things that they have at home, that's as kind of an escape from their everyday, right? So how can you bring that and do that in a way that makes sense in your market, right? Well, if you look at Lake Cumberland, it is predominantly families that go to this area, and it's definitely a heavy lake community. We also, because of the river, attract a lot of fishermen. We knew that these were not going to be luxury build cabins. We don't use the term luxury to define our brand, and that's intentional because it's not a luxury experience. It's a family fun oriented, really nice, modern cabin, cozy, clean, experience like that. So that's what we have to be clear about in our marketing efforts and in what we're doing. So I started sharing the journey about Cabins on the Cumberland on the Weber Co., which has definitely helped drive direct bookings and interest and so forth, especially being in my location. We're 4 hours away. So our target audience is within a 4 to 5 hour driving radius from where we are down there in Jamestown. So with all of that, we started sharing the story. We started sharing the process even before having this beautiful, polished, finished property, which, to be honest with you, has been really difficult for me from a marketing perspective, only because I just want it to be done. But people enjoy feeling like they're a part of the experience with you, they're part of the story. So they're like, wow, you're doing this thing. And we get to watch the build process, and, we get to feel like we are a part of that. And then they come visit and they come stay with you. And there's this deep level of connection that happens. And now they become a loyal guest that returns year after year. So we were also super intentional in our marketing messaging in that we knew guests come to Lake Cumberland year after year. We've actually been to Lake Cumberland, and there's a family that we went with, and they're like, this is our vacation spot. Every year we go and spend a week at this lake. So I'm like, all right, we knew that was something there was tradition around that. So we came up with the tagline, your family tradition starts here. And that was intentional because we want families to make this part of something annual that they do. So again, just instilling that returning guest feel too. So yeah, a big part of my background brought to light in this. And also I would say too, I am incredibly vision oriented. And I think building that brand and helping the bank see that and understand it, helping the partners see and understand that, that's what helped bring the project to life ultimately. Because it's yeah, you can see the land and be like, we're going to build some cabins, but unless the bank understands who's in the deal and what the vision is and what you're trying to bring to life, they're taking a risk too. So yes, the numbers make sense, but what's our intention and who's going to be operating it and managing it? Those are all factors that they're considering. So yeah, all good strengths.
Yeah. I mean, when you're forming a partnership, which we'll talk a little bit about this before we go into the next thing I want to dive into, but you have to have the visionary. You have to have someone who's like really detail oriented, doing the day after day, which is probably your builder because he's literally at the property bringing it to life. But you have to have so many different skill sets. And also, when you're forming a partnership, you're kind of talking about the hard things before they ever happen. Hopefully, they don't ever happen. But the saying of like you have to talk divorce before you're even married. That's really common when you're doing a partnership, especially for real estate, because everyone has different motives and rewards and how they're, motivated by monetary or staying there and seeing it come to life. Like everyone's hitting that serotonin differently in the deal. So what has that partnership, like what have you taken from a partnership for a really big property, huge undertaking for going forward? I'm really glad even for your first partnership deal, you knew your worth before someone ever had to tell you that. Like you knew your hospitality, your marketing, your branding, your vision was. Some people come to me and they don't think they should get a 50-50 split on profit or equity because they're not putting money in the deal. But what I tell people is money is actually not the hard thing to have. It's actually the skill set to bring something like this to life. But when you're in the mindset of, I don't have the money, you think money is the biggest thing. So talk us through how that kind of looks for you and what you've taken from, not just one other couple you guys are partnered with, but multiple in your first partnership deal.
Yeah, I mean, there are 8 people in this deal, really. If you look at us all individually, right? There's 4 couples that are involved in this. So a couple things. One, for anyone that wants to do projects like this or that wants to have partners, probably the best thing that you could do for yourself is build your own personal brand and be sharing what you're doing and be willing to share and be willing for people to be like, what? I mean, I just literally started asking about partnerships in Facebook groups and I had some like really negative responses on them. And I was like, okay, whatever, you're not my people. I am not here for you. Right. But we found some really great partners. We all work well together. I think we had to make a couple of important decisions up front and we had to get into alignment as a partnership on this. One was everyone that's in the deal was not as concerned about our immediate cash flow as they were the long-term equity. So everyone in this deal was not coming into this deal going, we need this to cash flow $100,000 tomorrow so that we can all get paid. Everyone understood that it was going to take us time as a business to get there and that eventually we'll be able to pay ourselves out of this, but that wasn't like the most important piece of the puzzle. All of the other partners also made it very clear that they wanted nothing to do with the management, which is where Colin and I came in. So every partner kind of had their strengths, and obviously like our builder is a partner in the deal, which is kind of unique. So they obviously have their strengths. Our CPA, she handles all of our finances. She actually has to file a tax return per every cabin every month. You guys, it's why is this the thing? I don't know. It's wild. And then Kate and Cam, there are other couple who are in the deal and they're just like, listen, we don't have kids. We're willing to do whatever we need to do to help. They have really demanding jobs, but like they will come and help and like build furniture and do whatever they need to do. So we had to kind of decide what were everyone's roles? What did that need to look like? We did have to have some of those hard conversations of like, what if a partner wants out? What if somebody dies? Like, what if somebody gets divorced? We had to have those conversations around what's our plan and what does this look like? One of the things that I didn't do in this deal that I would do in every deal moving forward from a partnership perspective, I didn't charge a design fee and I did not charge a like setup fee. So Colin's taken vacation time from work. We've taken time away from our boys. And everything that we've done for designing the cabins and for the install has been free. Now, all of the other partners are also helping, but Colin and I have definitely been the most active in that side of things. And you guys know if you're in short-term rentals, how much time it takes to design and to order things and to make sure that you have everything that shows up. I'll be honest, like we definitely do not. There were things that were not shipped to us or that got shipped to us incorrectly. And I'm like, I can't manage all of this. And the logistics of all of that were insane. This was another unexpected thing that we just had to kind of navigate and deal with. But the road is brand new. The cabins are brand new. So we're not on Google Maps. We're not in anybody's system to be able to actually ship to us. Everything for these cabins has been shipped to our homes here in Indiana, our builder's home and our home. Our builder went out and bought more trailers. And then we have to take everything the 4 hours down to Kentucky. It is a lot logistically. So everyone in the partnership has definitely taken on more work than they anticipated. And I definitely do feel like that's caused a little bit of tension, not in a super negative way, like nobody's up in arms with each other about it. But there's definitely a level of, we all said at the beginning, like, yeah, we'll put in some sweat equity. And now we're nearing the end and we're like, we're done putting in sweat equity. Like, this is not okay anymore. So we're close. We're almost done, but I would structure that differently. And like, now I have that knowledge and I would do that differently in another deal.
Yes. Yeah. I have been following along, you guys packing up the truck and the trailer and heading down. Feels like every weekend. I'm sure it's not. I've had to actually furnish an entire property without a mailing address, but like I was able to use a neighbor's property. So it was a hassle, like sending an 8-foot couch to a neighbor's house and having to like not burden them with storing it. Like it needed to deliver the day I was going to pick it up, or all the furniture in that sense. But I cannot imagine doing it 4 hours away. At least, you could store it at your own home, but that is a sign that people don't see. Like they think all the work starts once you're finding the deal under contract and then you close and it's like, okay, I did it. And it's like, now the work actually starts, is bringing it to life for a guest to actually enter that door and have that experience you're wanting to build. One thing that I definitely want to highlight that you're sharing on social media is the journey and the experience you're building before it's there. I think so many people think it has to be like perfect before you can start talking about it. And I even look back at the cabin and I'm like, I should have taken more content of like what we were doing and why we were doing it. But then I remember I didn't share my pregnancy on social media. So it was really hard to take and like walk people through. Like I was very, very obviously pregnant by the end. I was like 8 months pregnant, 9 months when the cabin was still in framing. But having that footage is really cool to look back on and just like see the difference. But also, like you said, you're taking potential guests or people that may want to invest with you through the experience, which people really want to relate with the journey. And that takes me to actually my last question, because I am huge on building like a lifestyle aligned business. Like build something that doesn't build another 9 to 5 for you and it doesn't run your life, because it's really hard to actually do that successfully as an entrepreneur. So I know you guys have 2 young boys, and you're looking at like, what is this going to look like the next 10 years raising our kids? We only get 15 years max with our kids before they think, we're not cool anymore. So what is building this business and what's coming next for you guys that aligns with the life you're wanting to live day to day? Because you can get lost in it. And in 20 years, you look back and you're like, that was it. Like those were the good old days. And I didn't realize it.
Yeah, Zoey, you are so good at that. And I always tell you, like, I admire your lifestyle so much and just in the way that you lead and in the decisions that you guys have made. And I just like, you are my inspiration for that. We are not there yet. That is for sure. We have definitely created like 87 24/7s for ourselves. But I think for us, our boys are younger right now. So Eli goes with me on work trips. He goes with me down to the cabins. He goes with me to go do photo shoots at client properties, which is great. And Noah hopefully will do that with me maybe at some point in time, although I can't imagine having 2 of them just with me. But I think for us, we have